Learn winning tactics. Understand what tactics are. Understand the case DT check, capture, threat method, and its importance. Employ the case DT method in your own games to localize and execute tactics. Recognize the importance of visualization and better understand how to practice visualization skills. Perform a skewer, discovered attack, a double check, and forks. Understand what pins are and how you can pin an enemy piece. Understand the difference between relative and absolute pins. Know what to do when you have established a pin. Have knowledge of common defenses for when you are pinned.
Welcome to the tactics chapter. You know what? I am so excited to start talking about and start working on tactics with you guys because it is honestly one of my favorite subjects, and also I feel like this is a area, if you put in a lot of work into tactics, you're going to make massive chess gains. And this is a consensus almost amongst stronger chess players, titled chess players, chess masters. When they offer advice to beginners, they almost always say, tactics is king, because they truly understand that in this beginner's rating bracket, the games are so often decided by tactics and also tactical blunders. But I feel like before we start diving deeper into the topic of tactics, I feel like it's very helpful to define what a tactic is. And tactics in chess can be described as maneuvers that create advantages, and that can be that you acquire some material, but it can even be that you checkmate the opponent. But the thing about a tactic is that the tactic has to be forceful, and that means that the opponent cannot escape your tactic. There is no way to escape it, and there's no plausible escape routes. So the tactic will help you get an advantage, and it is so forceful that your opponent just has to deal with it, basically. And before, we're going to talk more about tactics, but I want to start by giving you an illustration of a tactical maneuver, because I feel like it would be very helpful for you to have some more context and know exactly what I'm talking about. So, the example you can see right here on the board, actually, it is from my second over-the-board game ever, and this is against an opponent that has several years of chess experience. He is 1250 feet rated. I have played chess for 6 months only, and I don't even have a rating. So, of course, I have a lot of respect for him, and he dominated me for most of the game. But I was very fortunate because in this position that you can see on the board, a tactical opportunity emerged, and because I had been, a good chess student, I had done tactics and practiced them every day, I was able to spot the tactic. So in this position, the move is rook takes c1, and rook takes c1, and rook takes c1 check. My opponent, this happened in a game, captured my rook with their queen, and this was my plan all along. I wanted to lure the queen to c1, because that gives the opportunity for me to strike the final blow with my knight. So, knight to e2 is just lights out for the opponent, and they also chose to resign in this position. So this maneuver by the knight, when it targets two pieces at once, it's a very potent tactic that knight is actually known for, and we're going to talk a lot about this, but this is called a fork, and the very fork you see on the board is the most powerful fork of all. It's called a royal fork because it targets the entire royal family, so to speak. And the opportunity is left by no choice in these situations other than to move their king, and when the king moves, you can just snatch up the queen for free. So, this is actually this was a very important game for me to have. It's kind of a silly story, really, but To be honest with you, I was very hesitant and honestly a bit scared to go and play in my first over-the-board tournament because I felt like I have not played chess for a long enough time. They are going to laugh me out of the club because I'm bad, and what if I blunder an officer in the opening and they think I'm stupid? I had all of these thoughts and I was very scared to go. This was not my experience at all, so I did actually lose my first over-the-board game in that tournament. But everyone was super nice about it. They helped me analyze the game, and they were very complimentary and supportive. And then when I showed up for game 2, I actually got to win that game with this, this final blow, a royal fork, and against a 1250 feet rated opponent. So actually, when I put this fork, I was so relieved and happy. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing to talk about it, but I was so relieved and happy that I actually got some tears of joy because I was just so happy that I managed to win because I had no belief in myself. And of course my opponent was really mad because he had put himself in this position and lost against a nude to a royal fork. But it was kind of sweet actually, because when he saw how happy I was, he became happy as well. So yeah, it was a nice experience, and I know probably a lot of you folks are hesitant to go out and play over the board as well, but I do think you should give it a try because you're going to see so much improvement when you do this. And I think, especially after doing the Tactical Arsenal chapter, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with, because many of these old trotters in the chess club, they might not do tactics every day. So if you do it, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the lower classes and open classes. So I think definitely you should do that. But back to tactics, tactical opportunities. It's important that you understand that tactical opportunities doesn't happen consistently. They do emerge at various points during the game. So you have to be awake to discover these opportunities. And the thing is that beginners often overlook the opportunities, and they fail to, execute tactical maneuvers that easily could have secured them a victory. And that is because the tactical vision is underdeveloped. And this can also lead beginners to position their pieces in such a way that they, without meaning to grant the opponent the opportunity to execute a tactic against them. Like my opponent here, which placed their queen and the king in this formation. This is basically capturing here is basically just a tactical blunder, because this formation makes it possible to fork. So how do we develop this tactical vision, and how do we avoid tactical blunders? Well, this is all about practice, and you need to familiarize yourself with various patterns. Like, you need to see this fork, and you need to practice this fork 1,000 times. And then, in your own games, it's going to be much easier for you to spot a royal fork on time 1001 compared to your first time. So it's all about seeing the pattern and practicing the pattern over and over and over, because in essence, chess is a game of pattern recognition, and you just need to see the patterns and practice them, basically. So in this chapter, I have very carefully chosen some fundamental tactical patterns for you to practice, and these patterns were absolutely instrumental in helping me breach the 1,000 rating mark. But first, we are going to look at a very useful thought process that you can use to discover tactics in your own game. I'm very excited to talk to you about it, and it's called check, capture, threats.
Checks, captures, and threats are called forcing moves because they force you to take action. Either move your king or block the check. Retake the captured piece. Hopefully, it wasn't just a hanging knight out there. Or eliminate the threat, for example, defend against a dangerous fork, or a mate in one. The reason why forcing moves is so important is that they force you to respond, preventing you from following your plan. That makes your opponent's job a lot easier, and your moves much more predictable. That's why it is best to evaluate all the forcing moves beforehand and avoid any nasty surprises in the future.
This system will help you evaluate candidate moves in a hierarchically manner. So, first of all, candidate moves. It's simply just the moves that you are considering to play. So let's just break down check, capture, threat. And we will look at the check part of the equation first. So when you're searching for tactics in a position, you should start by looking for every possible check you can deliver to the opponent's king, no matter how silly that check might seem. And it's crucial to understand that the purpose here, it's not to just play random checks, because there are good checks and there are bad checks. And if you just play random checks that turns out to be bad, it might actually cost you the game then and there. So, your job is just to search for the checks and locate them, all of them, no matter if they seem silly. And the idea here is that, delivering a check to your opponent is the most forcing move you can make, because it does restrict your opponent's options, because they must either 1. Move their king, or 2. Capture the piece that is delivering the check, or 3. They have to block the check. And this makes it much easier for you to visualize your opponent's next move, because they have limited options. So, when you are assessing if a check is good or bad, you need to try and play it out mentally without physically moving the pieces on the board. And this thought process, it might go, something like this. Okay, if I deliver this check, my opponent has no other legal moves than to move here, and that means I can capture this other piece for free. So, you need to visualize all the possible responses that the opponent has, and don't limit yourself to just visualizing the first move. You need to challenge yourself to visualize 2 or 3 or 4 or even more moves ahead. And this is very difficult, especially at first, and it's going to require, a lot of effort and concentration. And if you get lost in the train of thought, or if you get confused, don't give up. You just need to start over, and you need to push yourself and just, do your best. And your brain is probably going to hurt, but this is a good thing, because that means the chest muscles are growing. So your ability to visualize, it's going to improve with practice, and it's going to get easier. And your efforts, they're going to yield substantial rewards, including an increase in your rating. So this practice of visualization is one of the most effective ways you can boost your chess skills. So while examining, all the possible checks in a position, you will often find that most of them, they're just ineffective and they lead to nothing. But every once in a while, you're going to hit the jackpot. So I'm going to illustrate this for you with the move that I found. So, the move I found was bishop takes f7. And this is actually the best move in this position. And it's all thanks to check, capture, threat rule that I found this. And that was because I started by searching for checks. And I stumbled upon a golden opportunity, basically, which was bishop takes f7. So, what happens in this position if they just move the king? Well, in this position, we can just, retreat our bishop. Let's say we play the bishop back to b3. And in this position, we actually have a significant advantage, because, not only because we got the pawn for free, of course, but it's also because the king can no longer castle because it had to move. And that means that And even if you look at the pawn formation here in front of the king, it is kinda in complete disarray. It's just very easy to attack the king here, and you can even see our rook right here. It's, very easy to start attacking here. So this is just a very good position. And so if they move the king, it's good for us. But what happens if they take the bishop? Willin will just be, an officer up. But the thing is, if the king captures the bishop in this position, we have a forced checkmate in 3 moves. And regardless of what black does, after capturing the bishop, it's going to lead to a checkmate. And that is a pretty good trait for a bishop. So let's explore that. The king takes on f7, and this was actually what happened in the game as well. So my opponent just couldn't resist the temptation. They got a bit greedy and they walked directly into the trap. So they should have taken the time to visualize. So this is a pretty cool move. Knight takes e5. And now the king is really feeling the heat, not only from the knight, but also from the rook. And this is a very potent tactical pattern that you're going to learn about later in this chapter, and that is the double check. And this is a very, very strong and potent tactic because the opponent has only 2 legal moves right now, and they have to move the king because they're being checked by 2 officers. And both of these legal moves, they actually lead into a forced checkmate in 2. So let's explore what happens if this did not happen in the game, but let's explore what happens if the king moves to e6. Well, in this position, we can check with the queen on g4. And then the king only has 1 legal move because all the other squares are taken. He can't move here because this is guarded by the knight. All of these squares are guarded by knight, queen, and rook. And then this square right here is guarded by the queen, so the only legal move is to move to d6, and here we have a very nice finishing blow. We actually have a checkmate by a royal fork, so that is kinda pretty. So, this did not happen in the game. In the game, the opponent went to e8, which is the only other option that black has. And in this position I played queen to h5, and I want you to pay attention to how all the moves I'm playing are checks. Every single move I have played is a check, and this made it much easier for me to visualize this entire line before I decided to sacrifice the bishop, because when we are checking the king, the options are limited, and it's easier for us to know what the opponent is going to do, and that makes it easier to visualize. So my opponent played g6, and I just played queen takes g6, and that is a checkmate. So I don't want you to stress about completely understanding or spotting tactics like this just yet. That is not the point. The primary task here is that you should grasp the idea of checks in the check-capture-threat formula. So we're going to do a quick recap. When you are seeking tactical opportunities, start by looking for checks, and you're going to evaluate all of the checks, no matter if they seem bizarre. And by searching for checks, you are going to aim to find the most forcing moves that restrict the enemy's options. So the goal is not to play random checks and not think it through, but you're going to discover effective ones by visualizing potential responses and considering multiple moves ahead. This method is going to improve your visualization and your ability to find strong tactics. So let's move on to capture. So what do we do when you are looking for a tactical opportunity and none of the checks work? Well, do that mean that we just give up and throw in the towel. Well, no, it doesn't, and you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that on my watch, at least. So, when you're looking for tactical opportunities and none of the checks work, you are going to move on to the second part of the check capture threat equation, which is captures. So when we're talking about captures, we're simply saying that, and you are going to just look at all the captures that are possible to make in the position, like every single piece. What are all the captures you can make? And you're going to identify them all, and you're going to see if they can bring you some opportunities. And in some cases, you might even discover that your opponent just left pieces unguarded and hanging that you can just snatch up. But in this position right here, I wanted to analyze the position on the board. So, in this situation, I believe that many beginners would be worried about their queen here because it is threatened by bishop. So in this position right here, many beginners would feel like, I need to retreat my queen. I need to bring the queen to safety because she is under attack. But do we really want our enemy to get the satisfaction of us retreating our troops when we are under attack without even looking for a counter move? No, we are not going to do that. We are going to look for a more active solution. And that is not to say, like, sometimes the most prudent choice is to retreat the forces. Sometimes you do have to do that. But before you do that, I would at least like you to use the check capture threat method and see if you have something more active to do. So, we're going to start by analyzing the board for checks. It doesn't take, long to realize that just the checks that are available in this position are just instant losers. Like this, for example, just loses the queen. Can't really find any good checks here. So now we're going to move on to captures. Look at the position and identify all the captures you can make. And I can just say right now that one of the captures are a winner, and the others are instant losers. So, the move is queen takes g2. See if you were able to spot that, and very well done, very well done. And if you weren't, not to worry, we're going to practice this a lot. So, in this position right here, can you see, we didn't only snatch up a pawn, but we are actually threatening two officers at once. So as you can see, it's not only the knight that knows how to fork, as the queen has actually forked the rook and the knight right here. And we are going to delve a lot into forks later on when we look at the patterns, but basically there's no way for white in this position to save both officers. So this is deduction for white, brings the king to safety, and at the same time the castling actually safeguards this rook. But still, the knight on v5 is hanging, so all thanks to the check capture threat method, not only are we a pawn up, we are also a officer up, and we did that instead of running to safety when our queen was threatened. So what do we do when the checks and the captures doesn't work when we are on the hunt for tactics? Well, we need to move to the last part of the check capture threat equation, which is threats. And threats, they are maybe the most trickiest of the three to understand, and they actually tend to reveal themselves to you when you move on from beginner to intermediate. But still, even if it is complex and it might be a bit challenging to understand, the very action of trying to understand it and trying to implement it in your own games is going to help you. It is fantastic practice, and it is going to, sharpen your chess skills. So, in chess, we can make moves that threaten the enemy. So what is the most powerful or impotent threat we can make in chess? Well, that is to threaten checkmate. Because when you are threatening checkmate, you are threatening to win. Because when you are checkmated, you lose. So, when the opponent has the option of either being checkmated or, for example, lose a queen, they will have to lose the queen. So it is very powerful, and you can threaten more things as well. So on the top, you can threaten checkmate. Next in line, you can threaten to capture the queen. And as you move down, you can threaten to win a rook, a bishop, a knight, and even a pawn. So, when you're on the hunt for threats, you need to start to look for the most potent threat. You need to see, can I threaten checkmate in any way? And this is, by the way, very challenging because you need to have knowledge of checkmate patterns, and we're going to cover this in later chapters, and that will make it easier for you to actually threaten checkmate. So right now this is difficult, but it doesn't matter. You only need to try to understand what I'm saying. You don't need to understand it fully. So, after doing that, move the queen. If though you can't threaten the queen, threaten the rook. If not, the bishop, the knight, or a pawn. So, in this position right here, we actually have a pretty significant tactical opportunity. So you can try and look on the position and see if you can find it by using the check capture threat method. But it is a very challenging exercise. So in this position right here, it turns out actually that none of the checks work and none of the captures work. But there is one brilliant subtle move that threatens checkmate in this position. And that threat leads to a variation where the worst case scenario for us is that we win the queen. And at best, our opponent is going to stumble into checkmate because they need to be incredibly precise to avoid the checkmate. So this is a very advanced example, and you are by no means expected to solve this on your own at this stage. And I will do my very best to guide you through it. And I want you to try to grasp the intricacies of every move and every threat. So your only task is to follow along and try your best to understand. So the brilliant move in this position is pawn to f6. And it's quite incredible actually how just moving a pawn one square packs such a punch. Because by moving this pawn we actually open the diagonal for the queen, which means that right now we are threatening checkmate in one move, because if black doesn't respond, we are going to checkmate here on h7. Black can't do anything, the game is over. So this is a very powerful move and black needs to respond. But then you can think, well, can't black just take the knight? There's no checkmate threat now, because if we move our queen here, black can just take the queen, so surely this is a blunder. But it turns out it actually isn't, because by moving this pawn, the thing was we wanted to open the diagonal, we actually don't need our knight even. And this is a very, beautiful and a bit of a shocking move. You haven't seen anything similar yet. But the move is queen to g7, and right now we are threatening checkmate on g7. So if black doesn't do anything, we will capture on g7, and it is checkmate, so black needs to respond. And right here you might think, but wait, can't the queen just be captured here by the pawn? But the thing is, notice how the bishop, he is put directly in position for the king right here, so the pawn legally can't capture because it would leave the king in check. So actually this pawn is what we call pinned. And we're going to talk much more about pins later. But just take a moment here and try to comprehend the nuances of this position. It is quite beautiful. So the only option, black has in this position to avoid checkmate is actually to sacrifice their queen. It is the only move they have to avoid checkmate. And this is just so cool because we can capture the queen right now. And it's just fascinating to see how we could win the black queen solely through making threats. And take a moment to examine this position right here and observe how neither the queen or the rook can be captured because of the pins. So of course the rook can't be taken because it would leave the king in check for the queen. And the pawn can't take the queen because it would leave the king in check for the bishop. And, both the rook and the queen are positioned, directly in front of the king, in line for capture. So this is just the beauty of tactics. I just find this so beautiful. And this exercise right here, it was actually...
Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe.